Hi there, Reject Nation. I'm Greg Alba.
And I'm John Humphrey.
We're going to watch a special video today. Top reward tier request from Lene, our doll from Texas. It's called Dark Side of the Ring, Season 1, Episode 3, The Killing of Bruiser Brody. I believe this is from Viceland. From what Lene told me, this was her dad's favorite wrestler from the 70s and 80s when her dad was in his youth. We gave Lene a heads up that because this is Viceland, we probably won't be able to put this up on YouTube. This is probably just a Patreon exclusive. We'll share on the community page. And we normally also, we've had to make sort of a rule of thumb. Most videos that we do, majority, take about anywhere from 90 minutes to 3 hours to finish editing. And the top reward tier is that $50 pledge. Just because of, to be fair all around, and majority of the vids from the top reward tier are not even monetized. We have had to sort of make a rule of thumb of not covering videos of this length because we got to, allot time and whatever. She did stay pledged last month, and she didn't have a request last month. We were like, of course we'll do this for you. You're Lene. You've been here for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so we always honor the special requests for our very loyal Patreon checks. B, she didn't have a request last month. So anyhow.
This is like the length of 2 requests.
Yes, exactly. So let's get into this. We do not know who this is. But we will.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Championship Sports. By now, all of you have heard about the tragic and untimely death of Bruiser Brody. Very disappointing to us.
A wrestler prior to a bout in Puerto Rico. His menacing looks gave him the reputation of a madman inside the ring, but a longtime wrestling promoter and others remember a very different man.
If you could picture a man coming to the ring, 6'6", 6'7", 350-some pounds, he looked like danger coming. It was the kind of danger you would draw him to.
People would actually run from him. They just all run and scatter. He had a chain. He'd sometimes hit people with it. He was just a wild guy.
Bruiser Brody's larger-than-life presence and in-ring brutality delivered an undeniable authenticity to professional wrestling.
Brody coming down the aisle is like a tornado coming to your house, but you still want to sit.
He'd beat you up with 2x4s, chairs, anything he could get his hands on. Bruiser Brody was insane.
On July 16th, 1988, this insanity bled out of the ring into real life when Bruiser Brody was violently killed in a locker room, moments before the opening bell.
What?
In the world of professional wrestling, it is still the only sport where its characters live in two worlds, where fantasy bleeds out into reality.
It's like the Schmodown.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mick Foley. In my career, there was one man more than any other I wish I could have had the opportunity to step into the ring with. That person was Bruiser Brody. The day that I got my hands on an old VHS tape with vintage Brody matches was the day that everything changed for me. I wanted to be the next Bruiser Brody. The stories I've heard surrounding Brody's death have always troubled me. After 30 years, we tracked down 3 wrestlers willing to tell their version of what happened that night and to chronicle the life and death of one of wrestling's greatest outlaws.
Just in case you don't know who I am, I'm Tony, Mr. USA, Atlas, broad at the shoulder, narrow at the hip, tower of power, too sweet to be sour.
One of the last people to see Bruiser Brody alive was Mr. USA, Tony Atlas, a former bodybuilder turned wrestler and a current WWE Hall of Famer.
Nice.
Okay, LT, stand up. Take a close line over the top. Cameraman, watch out. That was the shittiest finish I've ever seen.
Dirty Dutch Mantel is one of the business's most infamous villains in front of the camera.
Has the taste returned to your mouth after I slapped it out just a few seconds ago?
And one of wrestling's greatest minds behind the scenes.
In your experience, did you ever work with Brody?
I never did. I never had a match with Brody.
Why's that?
Well, he beat the shit out of you.
And then there's the madman from the Sudan, Abdullah the Butcher. Abdullah was also Bruiser Brody's greatest in-ring nemesis.
There, and this is a very graphic display of exactly what the world of professional wrestling is all about, the dark side, so to speak.
I've been in the business for 53 years. What else can I say? My name is Abdullah the Butcher, right?
Aww.
I'm not a wrestler. I don't grab holds. I use karate. I use jujitsu. Okay? I'm not a wrestler. I can beat you up any time that I want to beat you up. You understand? And the guy behind the camera, give me the fork so I can stab it all in his head. Then you'll know. Let me tell you something. Don't you ever say that me and Brody was fake. We are not fakes. We kept bringing them back and back. And the people would say, when I seen that match, that was no bullshit.
Damn.
What would a match resemble between Abdullah and Bruiser Brody? A bloodbath. Every night. We were like killers. We kept pounding.
When you get Abdullah Butcher and Bruiser Brody in the ring, there'll be a lot of blood.
Because Abdullah had this fork, and they did it every night. It was just a formula. Oh, I love the fork. I could stab him in the head, stick it into his mouth, do everything. Probably 85% of the match was outside the ring. He struck fear in the hearts of fans. When he went down to the ring, people moved out of the way. That's an art.
Brody's reputation in the business was he was a main eventer.
Force of nature.
So that's why he was so popular. That's why so many promoters wanted him, because he could put asses in the seat.
He was a superstar, and at that time, he was one of the biggest stars in the late 70s, early 80s, one of the biggest stars in the world. Bruiser Brody, he was a legend. He was a legend back before he died.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God.
Well, every time I come out here, I find something new.
Look at this, another.
Aw, he was a father.
Sentimental stuff associated with it. There's a lot of it, though.
Oh, here's a whole pile of photographs in here. I mean, take a look at that. Oh, boy. I first met Frank in Australia in the hotel that I was working in. I had no idea of his character because I only saw Frank Goodish. I never saw Bruiser Brody. Frank was very quiet, very intelligent, even back in those days, just like a regular person. So he never lost sight of who he was. He didn't become the character he created.
That's
crazy.
In my own case, I spent 3 years with the Washington Redskins in 1969, 70, and 71. I was an All-American high school football player. I went to school on an athletic scholarship. You want to know that?
We're wrong for this, huh?
Yeah, you've been wrong.
Okay, good.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No, I won't. I don't think you said anything there.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah, but I don't think it's good that anybody knows that I'm Frank Goodish.
No, well, I don't know.
Frank was kind of a little bit of a renegade.
That's crazy.
Yeah. For a long time.
I really bought the personality.
Who is this guy? I'm going to tell you now, it is not going to be an easy life. Out of a year, he maybe would only be home 3 months of that year. It was a challenge, but you do it. When Jeff was born, he changed so much because then he wanted to do for his family and he wanted to provide for his son. So it changed him, even made him softer than who he really was. When he was around his son, they had a really good relationship.
It's like Jason Momoa.
Exactly. Unfortunately. So a lot of stories I hear
in the biopic
are stories other people tell me about my dad. At the same time, it's hard to hear these stories because there's stories that people are telling me, and I don't have a lot of stories of my own to tell.
It was like this character that he created, that it was separate from the person I knew. I would take him to the airport, and he would just be dad, husband, get out of the car, had his hair pulled back, walk through those doors, take his hair down. He became Bruiser Brody on the other side, and I could actually see the whole transformation take place.
Fascinating.
Watch him Hulk
In
out.
July 1988, Frank departed for a booking in Puerto Rico, an isolated wrestling territory notorious for its wild blood feuds and the zealousness of its fans.
It was Blood City. blood all the time. Big shows, you'd have 3 or 4 matches blooded. Because remember, I told you, people believed. And they believed when you saw blood that it was serious.
Ricky Rodriguez wants to stop him. Look, the blood.
Oh my God!
Are violent people.
We're pussies now.
Or at least here.
They throw piss on you, they throw urine on you, they throw feces on you.
They stole me.
What the fuck?
They used to take cups, put glass or stones and throw them at me. They want to see somebody get hurt. They want to see somebody get carried out on a stretcher. Every place you go.
Yeah, we were like gladiators back then. Jesus Christ. Fucking Roman Coliseum.
Yeah, serious. It never goes out of style, man.
Some
Watching
weekly planners,
TV.
1907,
Beat each other to a
1988.
pulp.
Just his daily activities, it appears, his workout schedule and regimen, and where he's traveling to. San Juan, Puerto Rico, of all places. Yeah, I believe it was either 16th or 17th that happened, unfortunately.
In July 1988, Frank Goodish left his family in Texas and entered one of the most violent wrestling territories in the world. His family could not have imagined that this would be the last time that they would see him alive.
Is that the first time we're seeing the title?
In the summer of
Long
1988,
prologue.
Bruiser Brody left his family in Texas and entered one of the most violent wrestling territories in the world. It wasn't only his Puerto Rican fans who were waiting for his return, but some unresolved business and a bitter, long-standing grudge. The World Wrestling Council is Puerto Rico's main wrestling promotion, which was established by wrestlers Gorilla Monsoon, Victor Jovica, and Carlos Colon.
Carlos Colon! Carlos Colon!
Carlos Colon was the boss.
He's also a WWE Hall of Famer now.
He was probably his biggest star, Roberto Clemente.
Carlos Colon's right-hand man was Jose Huertes Gonzalez, a local wrestler celebrated in the ring as Invader #1. Gonzalez also acted as the company's booker, the person in charge of the creative direction and outcomes of wrestling shows. Frank understood the value of his character consistently appearing as an unbeatable monster to fans, as a way to keep them coming back for more. He took this aggression to a new level when he wrestled a young Jose Gonzalez, when Gonzalez was hoping to make a big impression in the WWF.
Brody and Invader, they didn't really care for each other. Their personalities did not mesh. Even their matches, you could tell there was something not quite right with it.
He was a pretty decent guy, if he liked you. If he didn't like you, he would beat the living crap out of you. But I just seen Brody take people in the ring many a time and just beat them unmercifully. He would just beat them to death.
Well, I'm trying to piece it together over the years. What brought this on?
What the
Let's go back
fuck?
in the past, in the mid-70s. They were grooming, I heard, Jose Gonzalez to be like the next Puerto Rican star. Bruiser Brody came in and had a match with Jose Gonzalez and just beat the shit out of him. He ate him up.
I mean, the whole face was swollen, the head was swollen up. Looked just like a pumpkin. Brody beat him so bad that SD had to take him to the hospital. SD special delivered Jones. He was a wrestler.
So they like
We put him in
really
the car,
fought
and
back
SD
then,
took him
huh?
to the hospital.
Jesus
He said,
Christ.
Puerto Rico.
Said, one day I'm gonna kill that man. He was angry. I mean, his head looked like a pumpkin, brother.
Bruiser Brody was worried about one image. That was Bruiser Brody. Once the people see you get beat once or twice, that brand, and he knows this, the brand becomes kind of violated, and he didn't want that to happen, and that's why he acted the way he did.
I don't know about the other professional wrestlers. I only know about Bruiser Brody. And when I go in the ring, it doesn't matter whether I'm in Texas or New York, or it doesn't matter whether people like me or dislike me, I'm going to be just as aggressive every night.
But I also heard that Brody was making huge money in Japan, and he had wanted to invest in a wrestling promotion somewhere, and he had Puerto Rico in mind. And there was an owner, a part owner, a minority owner, named Victor Quinones, who had 10% or something. But a lot of it was owned by Gorilla Monsoon. And I think Victor Quinones was brokering a deal between Monsoon to sell his shares to Brody, which would have made Brody probably a minority owner.
I think he bought part of that company. They wanted his money, but they didn't want his idea. And Brody ain't that type of guy.
Brody had his opinions. If you didn't like them, too bad.
Can you tell us your name?
David Manning. I was the booker for World Class Championship Wrestling. I was a little worried because Frank was going to Puerto Rico to wrestle. Frank said they owed him about around $25,000. And he had asked for the money politely. He had been waiting for the money. He told me before he left, remember I said this, I'm coming back with my money. And he said if I have to beat every one of them up, I'm getting my money.
Brody had mentioned to people that, and if he took over, he was going to get rid of Jose. And also, Jose Gonzalez had just lost his 3-year-old daughter. She died in a swimming pool accident. She drowned about 3 months earlier. Now his job is being threatened, and he doesn't like Brody in the first place. So you add all those ingredients, it's like fire and gasoline. An explosion was going to happen, and it did.
Oh, God.
Can I please tell the story? I beg you. Because I want to tell it.
Okay.
I want to tell the story. See.
Wait.
Yeah. Because for 2 days, I've been talking about everything but Brody. And I want to tell this story so bad I'm ready to explode. I've been carrying this story around in my chest for how many years now? This is how me and Brody started our day. Yeah, we were working out in the gym that morning. The same routine we did, his last day here on earth. So I go to the gym every morning anyway. And so me and him, we worked out together. And he said, hey, Tony, want to go get something to eat? So I said, oh, sure, I got to go get something to eat. And then he turned to me at breakfast and he said, I waited a long time to get in down here. So I just got the impression that maybe, just maybe, that he bought in the company. And he said, you are going to see a lot of changes. We was at the hotel, and Bruiser, Brody, and Dutch Mantel was sitting on the steps outside in the front of the building. And I said, Brody, I figured you'd be gone by now. He said, I'm waiting on Jose Gonzalez. He's supposed to pick me up. And right there, I said, that's unusual. Why would Jose, the booker, leave his main event? And I said, you can ride with us if you like.
So we went to the show, and traffic was horrible leading into the stadium because cars were lined up, so you know it was going to be a sellout. And we hopped out, we took our bags to where the dressing rooms were.
Now looking back on it, it was kind of strange, because when I walked in, I got a strange feeling. But Jose was sitting there. I said, he's here. As soon as I come to the door, I saw the three of them sitting there, talking. Jose, Carlos Colon, and Victor, they were sitting in the football huddle.
Yeah, it kind of seemed a little strange, because I've never really seen them together like that. And it didn't look like they were in conversation. They were just sitting there, which was even more strange.
Gonzalez gets up from his seat, looked me straight in the face, and left. Never looked at Brody, never looked at Dutch, and he walked out of the dressing room.
And Brody sat down right beside me. And I sat there maybe 5 minutes. And that feeling of tension, it just got stronger. So I said, I gotta get out of here. I gotta move. Maybe if I move around, it'll go away. So I get up and walk out. I go and I sit in the dugout. And I'm watching the crowd come in.
So I had my art pad, I set my bag down, I set my chair, and I started sketching. Brody came over, and he looked at it. He said, that is freaking fantastic. You get all excited, big smiles on his face and everything. And he said, I wonder if you would do one for me. So he opened up his little pouch, reached in, and pulled out a picture of his son.
My God!
I looked at him, Jose was standing there. And he had a towel over his head. Oh, Brody, can I talk to you for a minute, please? Just like that. Can I talk to you for a minute, please?
And Brody said, yeah. And he walked in there. And that's where it happened.
It's not unusual to discuss match plans privately, but on this evening, the conversation between Brody and Gonzalez would descend into an unthinkable nightmare.
That really happened right before he got killed.
In Puerto Rico, before his match, Bruiser Brody is summoned to a private meeting with talent booker Jose Gonzalez. There was a history of bad blood between Brody and Gonzalez, and wrestler Tony Atlas was witness to the growing tension.
He had a bag in his hand, a picture of his son in his hand. And when he turned away with the picture, that's when I noticed Carlos staring at me. As I'm looking at Carlos, I hear this sound. So I looked up. Brody was halfway hunched over. I thought Jose punched him in the stomach. That's what I thought. That the first thought came to me, damn, he hit Brody. I said, oh, this is going to be a fight. So then he hollered again. I looked at Jose's face and his eyes was bloodshot red. Then I saw the knife. The knife went in the air like this, with blood dripping off of it. I sprung up out of my chair and wrapped my arm around Brody's waist, just like this. I yanked him back, just in the nick of time to keep from his throat getting cut. And because I pulled him back, the knife came out and cut his ponytail off.
Oh!
That's how sharp that knife was. Carlos shoot right by me. And he grabbed Jose and pushed him up against the wall and said, no, Jose, no, Jose. And Carlos was keeping people away from Jose, telling the wrestlers, y'all stay back, stay back. So I take Brody, and I take him and I lay him down on the ground. I felt his intestines and blood all over this arm here. This whole arm was drenched in blood. And he looked up at me, he said, brother, don't let him hurt me no more. Please, brother, don't let him hurt me no more. He said, don't let them, not him, them. That's why I didn't know who the hell he was talking about. Who else is involved in this, I'm thinking. I said, ain't nobody gonna do anything to you. Carlos tried to approach Brody after I laid him down. I told Carlos, I said, don't bring your ass over here. I will knock your mother head right off the shoulder. He said, Tony, calm down. I said, calm me down. I said, y'all just stand together. I had nothing to do with it. I said, you're a goddamn lie. I said, y'all work together. So then Brody tugged at my leg. And he said, let him over.
So as I make my way back through the tunnel, I could hear the noise. It was kind of dark in there, but I could see the lights in the dressing room. Something was going on, and that's when I asked Mark Youngblood what happened. He said, Invader stabbed Brody. The dressing room was in a panic. And I see Brody laying in front of me. And Carlos is leaning over him, talking to him.
He said, Brody, is there anything I can do for you? That's what Carlos asked Brody. Brody said, just take care of my family.
And I don't know what Carlos was saying, but I'm sure he said, hang on there, man, we're going to get you help, we're going to get you help. But I do remember Brody looking up at Carlos and telling Carlos, tell my wife I love her. That's the only thing I heard him say. So that right there tells me that he doesn't have a lot of faith in his own survival. The shower had a door on it that wasn't clear. It was translucent, that you could see light behind it and figures. Vader never came out of the shower. He never came out. And he was in there with Jovica, who was part owner of the company. And they were screaming at each other. There's nothing I could really do, just watch. He walked out of the shower, walked around Brody's feet, went to his bag, got his keys, and he left. And his shirt, they said, was torn. Which tells me that whatever happened in that shower, that it was a physical confrontation with Brody ripping the shirt.
It took at least 35 to 45 minutes for the ambulance to get there. They tried to put Brody on the girth. They couldn't lift him. Brody about 300 some pounds, was too heavy. So I got down in the squat position, squatted all the way down, and slid my arm underneath him. And he looked up at me and said, don't you drop me. And I said, don't worry, brother, I curl more than what you weigh. So I pulled him gently and laid him on the girder. The old man walked back to the back of the ambulance to shut and lock the door. He said, before I shut the door, is there anybody here that want to go with him to keep his company? So I said, I go. And I jumped and got on the ambulance. And I remember guys looked at me like, what in the is wrong with Tony? He should stay out of this. You can almost feel they thinking this. Nobody was saying nothing, but you can almost feel that they were thinking, what is wrong with him?
Like I've said before, I'm not a religious person. Never have been. Probably never will be. But I did go and say a little prayer for Brody. Of whatever worth it could be. If it could help him fine. It couldn't hurt.
And we were sitting there in the ambulance. Brody was laying there, and I started crying again. I mean, I couldn't hold back the tears. And I sung this song. If heaven ain't a lot like Dixie, I don't want to go. My voice got choked up and everything got choked up. I just told him, I said, you're going to be all right, brother. I said, I'm going to stay with you, man. I said, I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
There's an old saying in professional wrestling. Consider yourself lucky if you make it out with one true friend. On this night, Brody had that true friend in Tony Atlas. But he would need more than that to make it out alive.
Fuck.
Tony Atlas finally made it to the hospital with Bruiser Brody in critical condition, although Atlas's struggle to save Brody's life was far from over.
We get to the hospital, and he lay there for probably about 15 or 20 minutes. I got freaking tired of waiting on the doctor. So I finally got one doctor that spoke a little bit of English. And I said, I've been telling people my friend been stabbed. How come nobody going to see him? He told me, he said, a stab in here is like a cold in the U.S. There's no big deal. He said, well, I will get to him when I can. And turned to walk away from it. I grabbed him around the waist, yanked him up, all the way up on my shoulder just like this. And I carried him into Brody. So finally he looked at Brody, he lifted Brody's hand up and was like this the whole time, just like this. At the same time he lifted his hand up, I remember I was taking his shoes off. When I saw his feet, and it was blue, oh no, because I knew this is real bad. So I said, doctor, please get him in now, you got to go now. He started calling people, come on, we need some help here, I got so freaking mad when I saw that, I punched the wall. I buried my fist probably about up to my elbow in that wall. That's how hard I hit that wall.
While chaos and confusion erupted at the scene of Bruiser Brody's stabbing, rumors began to fly and word reached across the stadium to Abdullah the Butcher in a second dressing room.
The doctor came and says, Brody was cut or stabbed or whatever. I said, come on. I thought it was a joke. In my opinion, I thought it was working an angle. But when the doctor told me, then I says, holy shit. Because the doctor wouldn't be lying. That was it. Brody he'd already been taken out. But the police walked in and thinking, well, it's just another crazy, wild wrestling brawl. They didn't think it was real.
I was banging on the operating room door talking about what the f is going on in there, what's going on in there. And the doctor came out and he said, Tony, he had 2 8-inch cuts. He said that we got his intestines back together. He said the only problem we have in that is that his liver was sliced. He told me he was going to be okay. He said he's stable. He said, but what you need to do, you need to go home because everybody in here is more afraid of you.
I wanted to be as far away from that dressing room as I could be. Then I saw Invader walk in, and he had on a different shirt. He continued business like nothing had happened. I don't know why he came back. I really don't. I'm thinking, man, what balls this guy's got?
The thing that was so horrible was when I got back to the dressing room. It was more horrible than the stabbing. It was more horrible than him laying on that table. The most horrible thing that happened on that night was going back to that dressing room and hear laughter.
Oh.
First, I couldn't believe they didn't cancel the show. That was the first thing thinking. And opening up the door, and the blood on the floor ain't even dry yet. And they in the dressing room laughing and joking and patting each other back, talking about how great the matches were and what a wonderful show it is. I took the freaking chair and I threw it across the damn hallway. It It was a policeman that said, hey, calm down, calm down. He said, did you see what happened? I said, hell yeah, I saw what happened. He said, did you get a look? Did you get a look at the fan that stabbed him? I said, what were you told? He said, everybody in here said that Brody was stabbed before he got in the dressing room, that a wrestling fan stabbed him in the hallway and he stumbled into the dressing room. I said, that's a damn lie. I said, that son of a bitch sitting right there is the one that stabbed him. He said, you mean Vader? I said, yes, I mean Vader. That sucker right there, that's who stabbed Bruiser. I said, ask everybody in the dressing room. He said, they all tell a different story. I said, they're all liars. I said, he's the son of a bitch that stabbed him.
He was telling the cops, hey, that's the guy you need to arrest right there. He pointed to Jose Gonzalez.
A woman sitting right in the chair right there was putting his wrestling gear in his bag. It's like nothing happened. That's the part that messed with my head so much. It was like nothing happened.
If you're a policeman and you come into a situation that you think could be staged, they didn't think it was real. Tony knew it was real, so they were actually engaging each other from different perspectives. That's why the disconnect.
In professional wrestling, the line between fiction and reality is intentionally blurred. As the night's events continued to unfold, it would be nearly impossible for anyone to tell the difference or to know the truth. While Bruiser Brody was fighting for his life at the hospital, Tony Atlas's eyewitness account of the stabbing was making the rounds.
So then that night you wrestled?
Carlos Colon, your time is over. That night I wrestled Aaron Sheik, the night of the murder. I just went and did it. I just went in the match. He locked up with me. He said, how's Brody? The doctor said he's going to be okay. And he said, you wrestling fan, they told me that they dangerous. I said, Jose Gonzalez did it. Right there. The sheet just straightened right up, just like that. That mother, Jose Gonzalez, Vader mother, killed the King Kong of the Brody. He rolled right out of the ring and went straight back to his locker room. We only wrestled for maybe 1 or 2 minutes. I go to my room and a guy named Savio Vega, they call him TNT. He said, Tony, I got your bag. I went to your room and got your bag for you. I said, for what? He said, don't go to your room. They are looking for you because you talking. So I took my bag and I went down to the beach and I walked the beach the whole night. I tried to lay down and get some sleep, but kept waking up every time I hear something. I just kept looking. I'm paranoid as hell now.
I go back to that hotel, walked to the front desk, and I told the girl, and I said, listen, if Brody gets any calls to his room, please put them through to my room. They said, okay.
The phone started ringing about midnight. Kept ringing. By this time it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, I'm going to answer and give them a piece of my mind. So I picked up the phone, and there was this woman, and she said, this is Nancy Colon. Well, Nancy Colon is Carlos Colon's wife. I'm calling to let you know there's been an accident, and I think you better come to Puerto Rico. So I called a hotel, and they put me through to Dutch.
She said, who is this? I said, well, this is Dutch. And she said, well, what happened, Dutch? And I knew it was pretty serious.
Oh, you gotta
but
tell
I
her.
was saying, well, Brody had an accident, and it's pretty serious.
And that maybe you should come to Puerto Rico. He didn't have any details.
After I got the call, I tried to go to sleep. I couldn't sleep. Like I said, the adrenaline was flowing. About 8 o'clock, I get up. I go downstairs to the front desk. I said, can you do me a favor? And she said, yeah, what do you need? I said, can you call the hospital that my friend Brody is in? She said, yeah. So she calls out there and she's speaking in Spanish. And I hear luchador, I hear wrestler, and then she starts crying. And I look at her and she said, I'm sorry, your friend didn't make it. I said, what? She said, no, he died last night.
How did you first learn that Brody had passed?
Abdullah told me at the meeting. When I slept on the beach the whole night. So now I'm going back to the hotel. I saw Abdullah and some of the wrestlers in the lobby. And they said, Tony, we having a meeting. And they waiting on you to tell them what happened.
Did you ever have any hotel room meetings?
Hotel? Hell no. No. No, sir. No.
Abdullah told us that he didn't have a meeting.
He lied.
Maybe they did, but not me. You understand?
He lied to you, if that's what he told you. I'm telling you what happened.
I had 5% of the business. You see what I mean? In a way that people did not want to talk to me.
What do you mean?
Well, if you own some of the territory, right? Who's going to come and say, oh, this happened, or this guy done this guy done that? They were in their own little bunch. So why would they come and talk to me? Brody was a friend, and I didn't want to be in all the gossip, what they were talking about. Nobody heard me say shit.
That's a shame. That's a damn shame that he done that. Dutch Mantel asked him. He was there in the meeting.
I think we all met in somebody's room. And somebody said, man, are they investigating this or what? I mean, a man died. What's going on here?
I just started thinking, in this territory, this happened? That's why I left.
I said, well, I saw it. So I go down, I make my report to the police department. He said, your story is different than everybody else's. He said, we will be contacting you for a court date. He said, now that we got a witness to it, we're going to arrest him.
Then they took me, and I gave my statement, and then all through the night they took statements from the wrestlers. He did say, he says, you tell Carlos Colon, we run this island, not him. I think they asked, did I see a weapon? I did not see a weapon. As a matter of fact, no weapon was ever recovered. That weapon, whatever was used, what knife was used, has never been recovered.
I got my bag, I went to the airport, and I left.
Then I made arrangements. I said, I gotta go to the airport.
Got on the plane with Jeff, get off the plane, waiting to see if anybody was going to pick me up. So I looked around, and here's Abby.
I was going, and this lady and this little boy walked up, and she says, oh, Abdullah, you don't know me, but I'm Frank's wife. She says, how's he doing? I said, what? She said, well, how's he doing? I says, they didn't tell you? Tell me what? I says, he's gone. And she grabbed me. She said, oh no.
All you think about is surviving. All I thought about was I saw a man get stabbed to death holding on and dying with a picture of his son in his hand. He never put that picture down, brother. When I put him on the ambulance, he had a picture in his hand. He laying on the floor, he's still holding that picture. He go in the operating room, he never put that picture down, brother. Never.
The irony of Brody's greatest nemesis delivering this news was only the beginning of the unthinkable events that would follow.
This gets more unthinkable.
Alone with her son.
I know, right? I'm like fucking locked into this weird dark zone. Yeah.
Every second this has been unthinkable.
So you smoke, I was like, oh yeah, we're feeling a reaction.
Yeah, right.
They took me to the morgue, and of course everybody is speaking Spanish. They took me to the window, and you could just see all these bodies in there. And then, of course, the reality, boom, just really started to sink in.
Not sure how long it took before it set in. We were in the hotel room, and I just remember crying just incessantly for hours, yelling, screaming. I still didn't realize the magnitude of what happened. And it probably took, I don't know how long, 10, 15, 20 years maybe.
When everything happened, it was like, what do I do? How do I bring him back to the States? And it was like I heard his voice. And it was like he was saying, Barbara, you know what to do. And at that moment, it was, I need to cremate him down here and take him home with me. There was a very simple ceremony in Puerto Rico. I mean, nobody was there except me and Jeff and some of the wrestlers and some of the Puerto Ricans. And Jeff picked out his dad's casket. It was blue.
When did you hear Jose was arrested? Sorry, Ben.
About 3 or 4 days later. From what I hear, he was taken down to a local precinct, never was put in the cell. Bail was made for him immediately by some big businessmen there, and he walked back home the same day.
And so did you come to learn anything about Jose Gonzalez or any of this stuff?
I know that I'm not going to say his name. I know that the attacker did it. From what I can hear from everybody, the whole court case was a sham.
I mean, do you think there was a cover-up?
No, it's not covered. The only guy that could have covered was Eureka Knight, and we didn't do that.
Right.
You know, we told the judge and the courtroom, we said what we saw, we didn't really, because I didn't see any stabbing, I didn't see any weapon, I didn't see anything.
A guy named Tony Rumble, the Boston bad boy, banging on those, and Tony, put your channel, put the TV on certain channel. They're talking about the Puerto Rico thing. I flip the TV on, I see Jose on TV coming out of the courthouse. I said, what, they had a hearing? He said, no, they have a trial, they let him go for self-defense.
Wow.
I said, you gotta be kidding me, they never contact me.
Never contacted
You
him.
never got contacted?
Never. Never did. Never did.
Finally, my subpoena came in the mail for my appearance. And I already knew the verdict by the time my subpoena arrived at my door. It was 10 days late. That's why the verdict came back not innocent, but not guilty. And Jose never testified. But they believed what his attorney put out, that he was just merely acting in self-defense. The fans in Puerto Rico believed wrestling was real. That was the major reason that Jose was acquitted, because they believed Brody was this character, this wild-looking psychopath, hulking figure, and his defense was self-defense.
Do you believe it was really self-defense?
Well, I don't know, really, I don't know. You know, I respect the law. So sad, I really, you know, I wouldn't want to talk about this anymore because it makes me sad.
1 month after Bruiser Brody's passing, All Japan Pro Wrestling hosted a massive tribute show, inviting both Barbara and her son Jeff to be honored in front of the 17,000 fans in attendance.
The honor that they respected, and being in that ring and hearing that 10-bell count and hearing everybody chanting, this whole building chanting his name, Brody, Brody, Brody. And I'm just standing there in the ring with Jeff, and it was the most, I mean, just to know how much he was respected.
May peace be with you, Bruiser Brody.
Bruiser Brody was a brawler of mythic proportions and will always live on as such in the world of professional wrestling.
I didn't ever guess that I was going to be a professional wrestler. Once I started in professional wrestling, learned the ropes. If I had it to do over again, I think that I would probably even pass up my 3 years in the NFL and devote them to wrestling because it's been that good to me.
He was one of its biggest stars in the 1970s and 80s and is considered one of the all-time greatest wrestlers in Japanese wrestling history, where he is still celebrated today as an icon.
Yeah, justice would be great. Some personal justice would be more gratifying than some legal justice, honestly.
Mr. Brody. Every dog has his day. And not kill a legend. See, legends never die. So if that was Jose's theme, is to kill a legend, he failed miserably.
Nobody knows the exact circumstances, including the words, if any, exchanged between Frank Goodish and Jose Gonzalez on the night of Brody's death. It remains one of wrestling's darkest and most intriguing mysteries.
Damn.
Join us next time as we continue to explore the untold stories of professional wrestling.
I wish he was here.
Yeah.
I wish he was here. He dished it out. I dished it out. And we kept going and going and going and going.
Yeah, those fork wounds are crazy.
Brody. Oh, shit.
Damn.
That was light and fun.
I feel good.
Feel so good.
Want to get lunch?
Action format.
Oh, man.
Watch something, go to lunch, talk about it.
And then we'll figure out, like, what food goes best with which kind of video, you know? Like, what do you watch after wrestling?
Even though I just watched this whole 45-minute video, I don't remember anyone's name besides Bruiser Brody. Who is the friend who rode with him in the ambulance?
Tony Atlas.
Tony Atlas. One part of my brain early on was like, maybe we need to hear multiple perspectives before I start going, nah, he's totally telling the truth. But as this kept going and you hear the stories and especially the outcome of the trial and verdict situation of how he wasn't contacted and neither was Dutch, is that his name?
Yeah,
the white guy with the big mustache.
Yeah, who got his subpoena late.
10 days late. Yeah. When you start hearing those things and the fact that he was the one who Atlas who rode in the ambulance with him and was the only one in the locker room and was also so passionate about this and how he was in contact. All these things just add up. Okay, yeah, I totally believe him. It's like everything points to you're 99% probably the one who's telling the truth. Yeah.
Well, and it's fascinating too to watch, footage of people recounting stories like that. I was watching another YouTube video just the other day, in fact, about body language during depositions and stuff like that. Not to, like, I don't know what happened, obviously, but at least from this version of the story and seeing everybody talk, you do start to see, like, especially when they're talking to, I think that was, like, Cologne at the end, and he's saying, like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, I don't know anything. He's, like, looking down a lot, and you start to wonder, because, like, Atlas has such a confidence in the way that he's speaking about it that he comes across very authentic.
Oh, yeah, he's like looking right in the eyes. There's so many reasons that point to he's the one who's telling the truth.
He really does come off very convincing, and it doesn't seem like he would have much of a reason not to be.
He's also the one who rode in the ambulance with him because he was the one there. And the way that every story recounts, like, this is just so crazy. I don't know much about wrestling history. You play with my e-cig now. I'm playing with your chapstick.
Where is it?
It's in my hand.
Symmetry. Where's the e-cig? Right.
Oh, that's what you mean. I didn't realize how real they did it back then.
And especially in territories that aren't the States. Because there are certain places, I mean, where even in other sports, even in like non-human sports, there are different territories of mightily different rules. And yeah, I'm not an expert either, but I have seen at least a little bit of old footage of some of the more underground or the less regulated stuff where like dudes are like slicing open their foreheads.
Yeah.
Because that was the other thing too, is you see like these grooves in a lot of these guys' faces, and I'm like, I bet that's because they've been cutting themselves or each other up.
Well, they Abdul guy with the fork. Like, those fork marks on his head.
That one guy spitting out a mouthful of blood. Like,
yeah.
It was like next level.
I was really surprised by that because we've been getting this weird introduction into wrestling.
I know, I feel bad. I don't have my shirt today.
Thanks for the shirt, Lene. We've been getting this weird introduction to wrestling over the past couple of years, like year and a half. You're learning about seeing stunt compilations, seeing specific wrestler tributes. My girlfriend, she's heavily into wrestling. We just I saw fighting with my family this year, and then I started looking up, and I've slowly been just going back further and further and further. I even watched the last week tonight, the wrestling where John Oliver was talking about like how the health insurance and the contracts work for wrestlers and how fucked up it is, and I'm like, damn, wrestling's fucked up, and I'm like, god damn, it was even worse, man. Like shit. I heard it was worse before. Like it's better than it was, but it's still pretty bad. Seeing this, I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that there was such a. I'm sure it still exists out there today that there are certain people where there's a fine line, but it seems to be much more of a showmanship now and just a show now.
Yeah.
It's more of a show than ever.
At least here, for sure.
Yeah.
It's very glossy and it's very high production.
And then looking at this, like, oh my god, I felt like they just really fought,
Yeah, well, I'm sure that at least some of those guys, especially down in Puerto Rico or whatever, you know, I bet to a degree they are just kicking the crap out of each other.
Well, I mean, in the early part of this, it wasn't all in Puerto Rico. It was in the States too.
Yeah.
So even in seeing footage in the States, you're like, God damn, I just did not know that they went that real with it. Like, I don't see shit like when you see people bleed now in wrestling, you're like, oh damn,
yeah. Oh, this is a special occasion.
And I'm like, oh fuck, you gotta just expected this back then.
Yeah.
For them to just be gushing blood, throwing their face on fire, and like these crazy ass things that there's no way that would happen now, you know?
Yeah. Well, hey man, people. That's the fascinating thing about wrestling for me, and especially watching.
I feel like they do it now with a lot more precautions.
Yeah, and especially in places like this where we have such an attention now on the physical ramifications, the responsibility of the organization to pay attention to those, you know, like, and other sports are seeing that too, obviously. I mean, football, MMA, things like that. But this, I mean, I thought we were going to be dealing with one of those stories where it's like, oh, you know, this is a very brutal sport and there are very real risks involved, but this is, a completely other thing.
It was a murder mystery behind the scenes of a personal vendetta that took place.
And the tragedy of the fact that, you know, I mean, I'm sure there are other factors at play, but, you know, they brought up that whole idea about how his image alone, you know, helped at least, you know, in Puerto Rico to influence a lot of people's perception of the case and his innocence and whatnot, you know.
Because early on, like, this is our introduction into who Bruiser Brody is. And then when you're seeing the images they're showing of the persona that he really formed for the public, I'm looking at him going, this guy must be nuts. And, you know, like in real life, I'm thinking he must be nuts and he got himself killed by how crazy he was. Like, that is where my mind went right away when I'm hearing, oh, the death of Bruiser Brody. I mean, look at this guy. He must have got himself killed.
In an audience with a chain right in his head. Like, maybe.
He looks fucking batshit. Then you see that one little nugget of an interview where he is so calm, so level-headed, so reserved.
When he says that thing
he even
about,
says, like, yeah, I don't want, and like, no, don't put that in because I don't think people should know my name.
I don't think people should know about Frank.
He wants because the image is a big part of his brain and he understood that. And then you're seeing these photos and everything and hearing his wife, and it doesn't seem like some bullshit thing that like a grieving wife is talking about. There's enough images and footage to back up like he really just wasn't that guy that the world thought he was, you know. It was part of the performance piece. I think that still happens in wrestling today where we often can misconstrue that. I mean, there's always a fine line when you're playing a version of yourself.
Yeah, like on the Schmodown.
Like on the Schmodown. I don't know, some of those people. But no, actually, on the Schmodown. I mean, just us being on YouTube videos, you know, or seeing any YouTubers. Anytime you go by your own name, there's going to be a different version of yourself that you present to the public. It just happens subconsciously, but when you make an intentional effort, I get why you believe that. So I was actually like, I forgot all about perception versus reality up until we saw that interview moment. Yeah. I'm like, oh damn, this guy's a genius. Yeah. Jason Momoa should play him in a real life movie. Like he should. Like I couldn't. Like there was a point where I forgot we were filming when we got to the whole murder element of it that lasted like 20 minutes in the locker room or something, 20 minutes, where I forgot we were filming. I was like kind of getting out of my head thinking, man, this would be an interesting movie. And Jason Momoa would be perfect to play this guy. You know?
No, he totally would. And I feel like that would be an interesting actually turn for him because it would require, some of that stuff we know he's got, but also some good dramatic chops, It would be his wrestler maybe.
Yeah, and Jason Momoa, as we see in interviews and everything, and he's a family man. He's really a sensitive guy.
Yeah.
But he gets hired to play like the toughest people in the world. So I'm like, he would be perfect for this.
Well, that's a fascinating thing. That was just something that kind of struck me because I think that's interesting. I'm sure a lot of wrestlers could probably relate in some way. I mean, I'm sure you've got guys who are really that kind of barbaric, or who have an affinity for that. But I do think it's fascinating when people who are, just like quiet and intelligent have this side. Like for me, not that it's any way the same, but like that's kind of what like working in haunts used to be for me. Is like, oh, here's a way to access, those feelings, the imposing, rageful, scary feelings.
Yes.
And wrestling, I imagine, is like that, but on steroids, because you really get to inhabit, like if he really was that quiet, thoughtful, intelligent guy, it's like, okay, here I get to inhabit the opposite, probably get a lot of catharsis that way.
That's so nuts how Puerto Rico used it against him. Funny enough, if this was a movie, we'd probably see a lot more of the family life perspective, really honing on who Frank was.
Well, it's a day in Frank's life.
Like who he was as a family man. But as I was watching this, I was actually hoping we got more insight into that. I know it's this is for television, and so you have to meet a certain time constraint, and they did interview the daughter and son.
Son and wife.
What did I say?
Daughter and son.
I'm gonna stick with that.
I think that's a better.
Yeah,
start rewriting the story in this review.
They do interview the son and wife here. That's when I was hooked. Oh, we saw the little interview, and then we saw the wife and the son, and you're seeing like, oh shit, this guy wasn't that.
This is not what I was expecting.
I would have wanted to explore a little bit. I mean, I know the big appealing part is what happened with the death and everything like that. For me, I suddenly became really like, I want to know who this guy is now. I want to know everything about this guy.
Yeah,
and who he was when he wasn't in the ring.
Yeah, where'd he grow up? What led him to the ring?
Yeah,
stuff like that.
And other than some basic ideas of how he was outside of the ring in his personal life, you know, like I wanted to hear more intricate details, and I felt like I want to know a little bit more about the son, you know, because I can't imagine growing up. You're not seeing your dad that often already, though they said like 3 months out of the year is usually when they saw him, right? And then to grow up with your father, this big public figure, being murdered, and then the horse, like he seems like he grew up to be a totally different guy than his dad.
Oh yeah,
you know, like he seems more like a book guy, you know?
Yeah, I mean he definitely had a sort of subdued, and I mean it's a heavy topic that they're interviewing him for, but yeah, he definitely seemed to have a very different energy and a more subdued quality about him generally.
He seemed to have that thing of like in Rocky, when Rocky has a kid who grows up and he's
yeah.
like, hey, I don't want to be a fighter, he's this guy, you know?
Yeah, apple fell way over there.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I would want to know how they feel a little bit more in depth, because as affected as the wrestlers are by this, and as immediately directly involved with the wrestlers are by this, the ones who are emotionally impacted the most are the family members.
Of course, yeah.
So while I wouldn't want it's that weird conflict of, I don't want to, you know, sensationalize their trauma, their pain, their grief, just use it for exposure. But I can't help but be like, I want to know how you guys have been dealing with this, and what you guys have gone through for it. Because they were doing this interview, she couldn't even say the guy's name, you know, who murdered her husband.
Well, yeah, and it's like, what's the aftermath like? You know, like what's it? I feel like that could have been constructed. Yeah, you don't want to make it like lurid or anything, but there is a constructive quality of like, yeah, what are you leaving behind, and what is it like for them to cope, and especially in a line of work that is so high risk, but under circumstances that are so out of the ordinary and so heinous, you know. But overall, I mean, this was quite an eye-opener, and I felt all kinds of things.
No, it was gripping.
Yeah,
it was very gripping. The way the whole death sequence played out, it's like we don't know what happened in the locker room.
We don't know what words were exchanged or who provoked who.
Not even Atlas will ever know what happened. I wish he just had at least uttered a word. You know, Brody. He couldn't really speak, but I wish he had just at least said one sentence would have saved us all. Like, you know, like because he did say like, keep them away from me or look after my family. He said a few things, but just one sentence of like, what was the guy who stabbed him?
Oh, Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Invader.
Yeah.
Jose Gonzalez.
If he had said Jose stabbed me, you know, like that would have just been, that would have just settled the whole thing right there. I mean, even though I believe Atlas, it's so eerie to see that Jose because sometimes documentaries will take the biased point of view.
Yeah, you never know.
It just doesn't.
We are novices in this arena.
And we're seeing this through their perspective.
It's convincing, but
it's very hard to think of the other side when you hear like when you see the footage of like, I don't want to talk about this, and then people are refusing to be interviewed about it, and then hearing how the courtroom plays out, you're like, nah, I believe Atlas. Oh yeah, I'm just this is like a shocking tale to me. I wasn't expecting this because we didn't know who he was. To know that he asked for a sketch of his son moments before, I'm like, fuck, could you not be any more cinematically dramatic right now?
I was like, this feels like a moment out of a movie.
This feels like if it was a biopic movie, I would be like, that shit didn't happen. You know?
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing too, is like, I'm fascinated, just on a sidebar, again, kind of piggybacking off of Bruiser, you know, the hidden lives of these guys, because like Tony Atlas seems like he's pretty great at drawing. That portrait he had of Bruiser at the end, I was like, oh wow, like, you know, like, which is I'm always fascinated by those kinds of surprises and stuff like that, and that detail broke my heart all the more. And to know that he was clutching that photo, like, it really does. It's fascinating the double life that guy must have led, you know.
I feel like it would be cool to see a movie of this guy. Not to do like the whole murder mystery thing, but something that shines a light on who he was outside of the ring.
Do it like Fruitvale Station. were you to spend the first like hour of the movie or the first most of the movie just getting to know this guy, and then at the end you show
That's like Vox Lux.
the thing. Oh really? Did you see that?
No, I heard that's how it plays out.
Oh okay, all right. Yeah, make it like Vox Lux.
Yeah.
Get Natalie Portman to play Bruiser.
Well, thanks, Lene. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah. Thank you for enlightening us.
Thank you for enlightening us. I can see why I could see why this guy was a cultural icon, and I feel sorry that you're the family involved. But too bad your dad lost him too. Since he was one of your dad's, like it sounds like one of his heroes in the day. And he took a social media break last month. That's why you weren't really getting back to us, and that's okay. Taking a social media break is kind of difficult for John and I to do.
When it's part of your business.
It doesn't mean we don't do it from time to time. Sometimes I delete my Instagram and Twitter app for like a week. I'm glad you got to have a full break. Hope you feel refreshed and ready to deal with all the positivity the internet has to offer on a morning, noon, and night basis all around the globe. Love you, my dear, and hopefully you enjoy. Thanks for introducing this to us. This was shocking, insightful, and a video I'm never going to forget.
Nope.